So, I want to make this quick because I'm really fatigued, but I have a lot to say. I didn't sleep last night. Literally, I went to bed at 8:30 a.m. today, like this morning. And I went to bed, I didn't set an alarm, and my body woke up after it got 8 hours. Also, I was interrupted. So I woke up at like 4:30 p.m. today. I wasn't on my phone. I was on my phone, but what kept me up wasn't my phone, it was what I watched right before I put down my phone. And the thinking is what got me to stay up last night. And I will try to make this as quick as possible. But there is this woman, and she's a licensed therapist, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, she was like, so many people are always like, watch out for these red flags in relationships, or telltale signs that that it's a red flag, like red flag talk, right, for relationships. And she's like, I want to do something different. So she did a series, a 3-part series on green flags in relationships. And before she went into it, she was having like this whole epiphany of thinking back on a conversation she had with some of her friends a couple years back. And she was realizing that usually people that come from broken homes, witnessing broken relationships, and experiencing broken relationships, they usually look for the red flags in the relationships, as in like, not necessarily looking for red flags, but they're like looking for what is going to go wrong in the relationship. So when they look at a potential partner or even current partner, and they're like, what is going to happen? What could possibly go wrong in this relationship? Let me think about that. Let me think of all the negative things, you know, like what are all the cons? What could possibly happen? What could possibly hurt me? And the people that came, usually the people that come from a secure environment and secure relationships and stuff like that, they tend to look for, what does this relationship bring to me? Like, what good comes out of this relationship? What are some green flags, right? And she's like, that is so interesting. And she shared that before the series started. And the series started with, it's a whole 3-part series of her just listing off green flags for relationships. And your job as the viewer was to put it in the categories of must have, nice to have, and not important. So I was like, oh, that would be pretty cool. And what she wanted us to do was, after we did all that, watched all three of the videos, she wanted us to write down all the things that we put under must-haves. And after we did that, she told us to go through the list again and really be honest with ourselves and think, are these really must-haves, or are they more nice-to-haves? And she's like, once you do that, then she was like, do not date someone or move forward in a relationship or continue a relationship with someone who does not have these must-haves on your list. And she was like, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Most of the green flags that I listed in this series should be must-haves. Something like, this person makes you feel listened to, respected, and safe when you're talking about something difficult or trying to resolve a conflict, something like that. Something as basic as they're kind to you and they're kind to others, stuff like that. There was other ones that I won't get into, but after she said that, she's like, also take note of green flags or just like in general on the list. What are some things that can be learned? Such as like, maybe this person isn't necessarily bad at communicating, but they could definitely be better. They're not the best and it's not ideal. It still causes problems. Then she's like, you know, well, that's up to you if you want to stay in it and work it out and see it through. Because ultimately, she also reminded everyone that you cannot change someone. They need to change on their own. So, you know, don't go diving into relationships that you think that you can change the person and fix them, because you can't do that. Afterwards, she was also saying, now go through your list again of your must-haves and think about if you are able to provide that for your partner. You know, a lot of self-reflecting stuff. And then it got me thinking, and I thought about I only counted all the major romantic interests, or the ones that I considered major in my life. Like the ones that I wanted to get involved in, the ones that I pursued a relationship with. And I thought it would be interesting. Also, I knew it was gonna stir some things up inside of me. But I thought it would be interesting to go through that list of people and then go and for each person see how many of those must-have like green flags did they actually have at that time. Because all of them I don't talk to anymore. Some by choice, some not. Some different situations. Anyways, they were all by choice of not talking, right? But like, and for my instance, okay, we're not going into detail for that. Also, it's winter and my hands are really dry and my face is really dry, so every time I try to like soothe, it just irritates my skin more. Doesn't help that, you know, the constantly washing your hands thing also dries out your hands, and it's winter, so it's just extra dry. Anyway, I chose where I started, and there's 5 people. There's 5 people that I did this for. And it was eye-opening. And it made a lot of sense how some of those relationships turned out. And one thing, when I was younger, I noticed that when I would like move on and now I'm interested in someone else, that person, and I always felt so much of a bad person to think like this, but I was like, every time I get involved with someone new, they're always like an upgrade, and that's a really bad like analogy. Like, I wish there was a better way to word that, but I can't think right now. But each person that was new, like leading up to where I am now, it always got, the newer person always got closer and closer to what I ideally wanted out of a serious like relationship, like a long-term relationship, a commitment, you know. It got closer and closer and closer, so they ended up being like more serious in terms of like coming closer to the present. My head's not all the way over here. The timeline that I'm going off of is a span of like 10 years. Which is crazy to think of. But it was also really cool of seeing like how my first huge romantic like interests and stuff that really impacted me, I was like 13. And you know, it's like those feelings are still real, but also going through that list and like reflecting on the relationship and stuff, it is so crazy to see like in myself, you know, how what a 13-year-old thinks a deep connection and a healthy connection with someone is versus someone like right now, present me, sees a deep, healthy connection with someone. So I can't imagine what 10 years later, 30-year-old, 32-year-old me is gonna see. But the whole upgrade thing, it was also because I was, becoming, throughout the 10 years, I became more comfortable with who I was. I became more self-aware. I became more healthy. And I started to realize what I wanted and what I deserved in a relationship. And so it made sense that the relationships that were closer to the present were different than the ones that were 10 years ago. The one at the beginning of the timeline had like 0 to a few of those green flags that were must-haves versus the ones that were in the present that had practically all to close to all of the green flags that I need in a relationship. And that just blew my mind. And I was like, blew my mind, not in a bad way, but in like a wow, like if that doesn't also show progress and growth and all that kinds of stuff, if that also isn't an indicator of becoming more healthier and as a form of loving myself, because you know, having standards isn't bad, and being able to love myself that way, of not putting myself in situations that I don't need to be in and don't deserve to be in, is awesome. And it just made a lot of sense how the ones on the earlier part of the timeline, it just blew my mind, where I was like, I was so infatuated. At the time, you know, I was just like, oh, I love this person. I deeply cared about them. But in the end, it was just a deep infatuation with that person. And that person mainly had, I feel like they had more red flags. And the green flags that they did have, they were like half-ass green flags. Like, it wasn't a consistent thing. It was like sometimes, you know. And if I was like euphoric, I don't want to say euphoric, at the time, I guess I would have thought it was euphoric, but I was like, oh, I am so happy. In that, where there's little to no green flags, I can't imagine how out of this world it's going to feel to be in a relationship. I'm not saying that's perfect, because no relationship's perfect, but a healthy relationship. Now that, you know, I'm more like being with someone that's actually emotionally available. But being with someone that can actually sit down and have hard conversations without, you know, like in a peaceful and constructive way that still makes sure that both parties are acknowledged and listened to, and there's such a thing as like compromise, and it's not this like petty it's not filled with like petty fairness, if that makes sense. I don't know. That seems like so basic, which it is. A lot of these green flags are just the basics, the bare minimum. Be a decent human being, you know? Like, one of the green flags she threw up in the series was they're actually really into you. Yeah. They should be if they want to pursue a long-term relationship with you. And then there was another video that got me thinking more, and this is why it went into like the 8:30 a.m. And I still have a lot to process, because it's not something that I could process in one day, but it was this girl, beautiful. She's beautiful. I don't know her personally, but from what I've seen, from what she's shown on camera, beautiful inside and out. But she always struggled. She was talking about a session, because she just came out of therapy, and she was like, I gotta talk about the session that I just had with my therapist, and it was revolving around her like trust issues and abandonment issues, and I'm just like, and the fact that she never really had secure, stable relationships. People were always in and out. No one really ever stayed. Things were always rocky. And she would explain, like, every time I have a relationship, I always have this fear. Even when things are going amazing, she always has this voice and fear in the back of her head, like, this isn't gonna last long. And she was saying, like, as much as I love to love on people, and I can imagine myself doing that for an endless amount of time, like, I don't ever see myself, for the most part, leaving someone's life that I care for and I love. She can't see that reciprocated, and it's hard for her to imagine someone wanting to be with her in her life long term. And this is why she's like, I always struggled with relationships, you know, romantic, platonic, familial, all that kind of stuff. And the point that I was bringing that up is her therapist told her that something that she really needs to process and accept, because it very much can be the reality, is that you might be single your whole life. You might not get that like like storybook ending of finding a partner that you end up spending the rest of your life with until you die. That's a storyline that's not meant for everyone. And her therapist is like, I think it would be so good if you work on accepting that. And it, you know, the therapist wasn't saying that she'll never find someone, but it brought up a lot of things of how she, even though she never really, like, she was like, it was never like a goal that she was striving for, to find someone and settle down, but it was always in the back of her mind, like, well, it'll happen eventually, but what if it doesn't? And realizing how much of her like identity and like worth she would put in that itself of being in a relationship. So much worth she would put in it, something that might not happen. And she's like, of course I was upset, I was angry, I was hurt. I was like, at first she was like, I refused, I didn't want to talk about it, I didn't want to think about it. And it's something that I want to think about too, because it's not that her or I, like she or I, don't deserve to have that kind of ending. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. And I'm not crying, but like for the past week, and it's not allergies, unless, because I have seasonal allergies. I know this is off topic, but like my nose is in this weird place where it's like clear, like I can breathe through it, but it's kind of runny, and I've been sneezing a lot. Like my nose has been extra sensitive. Anyway, so she started to really, she's like, you know what, if that's, she's like, I want to start giving to myself what I would want from a relationship. And she's like, I don't want to keep waiting for someone to give me something in a relationship. Why can't I give that to myself? I was like, which is totally true. And you know, everyone has their love languages. If you haven't heard of the 5 love languages, highly suggest that you look into it, because it makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I feel like it helps with relationships. But for me, my top 2 are acts of service and quality time. Thought physical touch was all the way up there. I was wrong, but it's definitely 3. I like physical touch, but it also depends on the situation. But that's a whole nother story. I'm not gonna talk about my love languages. But you can pour into yourself with your own love languages. So I was like journaling and like thinking about all the ways that I can show up for myself, show up for my relationship with myself, and how I can pour into her, pour into me with my love languages. So acts of service. What are the things that I like people to do for me? I love it when like someone surprises me and cooks me a snack or food or makes my favorite drink or like something that they know that I'll like, and like they come and bring it to me. I like that. So there was one morning I posted a video already of me waking up feeling like crap, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make you waffles. And it honestly did make me feel better. I still felt bleh, but I felt loved on. quality time. I feel like this is a way of quality time. It's 25 minutes of me just being able to talk openly with myself, which it makes it seem less crazy because it's on camera. But I would do this way before I even filmed this. And then really digging into why relationships are practically idolized and why it's seen as so bad if you're single. Like, not bad, but almost like, you poor thing, you're single. You know, like patronizing people. I think it blows people's minds that some people choose to be single. I don't know. There's a lot that I don't have the brain capacity or the time or storage to talk about, but there was a lot of things that were circling in my head. A lot of things that 2020 in general as a year have brought out for me. And just reflecting on and thinking about what do I want to do in 2021? Not like goals necessarily, but not like a bucket list either. Because 2020 has also, I had big expectations like everyone else did for 2020. It's this new start of the roaring 20s, all that kind of stuff, you know. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be spending my 20s in the 20s. And I was like, I ended up putting so much expectations and weight on this new decade that I remember stressing out journaling in December of 2019 of like, what is it that I want from 2020? What is it? And I want to go back into my journal and see what I wrote. But obviously everything got turned upside down, but I'm actually very grateful that I went through everything that I went through in 2020 because it has opened up so much for me. It opened myself up to myself. And that in itself is so beautiful. And I don't think that would have happened if we weren't in a pandemic. If I wasn't in the place that I was in at that time, where I'm at now. And another thing that I did a couple years back, and I did recently, not too recently, like a year or so ago, that I want to do again, and it also popped up in my For You page for TikTok, was that to write yourself a love letter. I remember when I first did it, it felt so weird and awkward and uncomfortable. But then I really had to dig into why it was so uncomfortable and weird for me to love on myself. And working through that, and then seeing the past love letter to like the most current one I have, and seeing how that evolved and how I talk to myself, how I treat myself, how I look at myself, how I view myself, and how I receive it. And oh my goodness. Because also, like, you know what you're insecure about, you know what hurts, and what you would want to hear from someone, what you would need as support. And so sometimes it's a huge pick-me-up to like read a letter from yourself And that's something I want to do. Again, there's a lot. I'm trying not to put so much pressure into having like set plans. I'm sure you hear that. My sister, she's watching anime in the living room, and I don't know why she's coming in here. She's just walking and singing, and I'm trying not to put so much pressure in having a set blueprint. I felt like I pushed that too much on myself in the beginning of 2020 of like, you need to get your crap together. But there's no certain, like, how everyone gets their crap together is different. The journey's different in general, which I won't go into. There's a lot, and this is 31 minutes. There's a lot of reflecting, realizing there was a lot of epiphanies. And one thing that I will say that I realized yesterday about the 5 people that I told you that I did for the let's see if they even had any of my must-haves. The most current person when I did it. Mental health was a huge factor in this relationship of why it didn't work out the way that, honestly, that I saw it panning out. And I feel like how they saw it panning out too. Because if it wasn't, and obviously I don't know this for sure, but I feel it, that if this person wasn't struggling so much with their mental health and with themselves, then they would have had the 2 green flags that they didn't have on my list. If they're in a healthier place mentally and emotionally, then those green flags would have been checked. And I know this is all like wishful thinking and stuff and like assumptions. But the one thing that wasn't the realization. The realization was, because one of the green flags that the person said in the series was, when they say they're going to do something, they do it. And the person the current person that I'm talking about, I couldn't remember once that they didn't do what they said they were gonna do. Which also like gave me flashbacks to my last conversation I had with that person before we kind of cut off contact and they fell off the face of the earth, which is another thing that, okay, was that, you know when you can see it in someone's eyes that they're saying something because it's just better that way than saying what they really mean. This person, I do feel like they truly are someone that does what they say they're gonna do, because instead of just prioritizing their feelings, if they did want to, you know, be more serious in the relationship and take steps forward, you know, to forward the relationship instead, they were open and they were honest, and they said that they can't provide what they would like to provide. They can't provide the emotional availability and other things that we talked about, and that they were not ready to be in a relationship because they couldn't give what they would want to say they could, because they weren't there mentally or emotionally, and they had a lot of inner work to do. And as much as that hurt, it was one of the best things. It wasn't just the honesty, but it was the fact that they weren't gonna make empty promises of, I could possibly do this. When they probably knew that it was just gonna make both of us spiral in our mental health, because I was in a better place, a little better than they were, but we were still struggling a lot mentally. And not being able to hop into a relationship, even if the feelings are there. But when it's a mutual understanding of the fact that even though the feelings are there, it wouldn't be healthy to get into a relationship. And I think that was a big thing that I had to process a lot of, like, it hurts because you wanted to be in a relationship, but at the same time, it was almost an unspoken agreement that we were both not in a place to healthily grow in a relationship together. That there was a lot of work we needed to do on our own. Yeah. Another thing that's hard is usually when, I don't know why, but the people that I end up really getting involved and attached to for relationships, specifically, I'm specifically talking like romantically for this one, but there are a couple like platonic, but the few people that I'm thinking of, they all ended up just falling off the face of the earth. All of a sudden they deleted every source of social media and contact, not just to me, but to the whole world. And they just became a literal ghost. And of all those people that I'm thinking about, there's like 3 at the top of my head. Oh my gosh, why is it so loud? There's anime loud playing, if you can hear, but the one thing that was hard that I'm going to the one thing that I've been mulling over in the past couple days, especially with recent events of finding out about death was that I, for the most part, chose to walk out of these relationships because they were doing more harm than good to my emotional and mental state. And for the health of myself, I had to step out of the relationship and leave. I left when those people were not in a good state mentally. Like, very bad. I think almost at their rock bottom. Like, it was like I met them at their rock bottom, and then things got really, they started to pick up a little bit, but it was too much, and I had to step out. My point is since those people fell off the face of the earth, I don't know why this thought came into my head the last couple of days, but they could very well be dead, and I wouldn't even know. And that broke my heart. And I was mulling it over more and more, and I was just like, sometimes though, as much as you're concerned for someone, it still isn't the best to reach out to them. And sometimes you really do have to care for people from a distance. But and I'm okay with that. But since they fell off the face of the earth, I can't even see if they're doing at least alright. And I know it's just like implying that I stalk them on social media and stuff. That's not the case. And that's what worries me more, is like, when you move on, you know, and you don't do that kind of stuff, that doesn't always take away the worry you have for their well-being. But it's not as simple as being like, hey, how are you? I don't know. Like I said in a couple videos ago, I have found out about a lot of people's deaths lately. Some people were strangers, but they're connected to people I know, and some people are people that I actually knew. And I don't know, maybe there's some thing tied to feeling responsible for them dying because I left at a time that they needed someone. The thing is, if I stayed though, I would be gone. Not necessarily physically, you know, like, your spirit can die. I could have been in rock bottom way longer than I was. And I guess it's just bittersweet too, because I feel like I sacrificed helping someone for myself, for my own well-being. And, you know, being upset that I couldn't do both. I didn't expect to talk about that on here, but when do I ever? I, yesterday, was also frantically looking online to see if this person was at least still alive, but they were very good at erasing themselves from everything. I knew this person's sibling too, so I was like, maybe they at least have some current stuff on them. There's nothing. Their sibling didn't post since 2018. So yeah, there has been a lot in here. Hello. It's 46. You know what? I'm gonna go eat some cookies and milk. So, okay. Well, have an amazing, beautiful, wonderful day, night, wherever you're at. And if you're not having one of those, that's valid too. It's okay to have bad days, or numb days, or semi-sweet days, off days.